You good to go?
Sounds good.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle show. I am Danielle C. Baker. And on today's episode, we will be featuring dads again. I invite you to watch a previous episode that I did on the father figure that matters. And today we're going to be talking about changing the narrative and how it is important to give a positive image to fathers. And I have an amazing guest today, Anthony Richard Ray. He's on. He has his own podcast called Dad, Can We Talk? And I invite you to look for it because it does really shed a positive light on fatherhood and on fathers that do show up for their children. So thank you, Anthony, for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. I thank you for the opportunity.
That's great. Now, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Just kind of talk about your story and how you got here.
Well, for me, I am a father of three. I have a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Been married to my wife for 10 years. Shout out to my wife. And really, the way I got here is I became a dad in 2013. And me growing up without a dad, I was just really I made it my thing to make sure that I wasn't what my dad was. And so that was kind of like my start. I was like, I'm just going to be the best dad that I can be, make sure I'm just there for my kid. And then, progressively, as I started having more kids, then I had my second child, 2015, and my third one, 2016. And, just doing regular dad things, taking care of my children like I should, and I always have my children with me everywhere I go. Usually my wife is at work, and when I get off work, I go pick my kids up from school and we just go do what we do, run errands, go to the bank, go to the grocery store, go here and there all over the world. And my babies are just always tagging along. If I'm doing ministry, whenever, I just have my kids with me. And I started noticing that people would give me these, what I wouldn't necessarily call them backhanded compliments, but sometimes it felt like that. Like, for instance, one time I was in the grocery store and, this guy, he was smiling at me and he was like, hey, man, he was like, I just really love to see what you're doing. I see that you're with your kids for the weekend.
Oh.
And I was, I was like, I kind of didn't really know how to react to it because I'm like, no, not for the weekend, just in the store with my kids like I always do. And, I would receive compliments like that a lot. Or, I would just have people, just all the time, just saying, oh, I just really love seeing dads with the kids. But I always felt like they only said it to me because I was Black with my Black children. And I would see white guys all the time doing the same thing that I'm doing, but I didn't really see them getting compliments. And it just, for me, it made me feel like, wow, is that the picture that we have of Black dads? I mean, and I understand it. I will say that I do understand where it comes from, but I'm like, I can go and get 50 to 75, 100 dads right now that I know personally, that's just like me. Everywhere I look, I see dads like me. And so that just made me, one February, I was like, for Black History Month, I'm going to highlight a different Black dad on my Facebook for all the 28 days of February. And that's so I did that. And it caught a lot of attention. People were just loving it. And I'm like, man, I'm having a hard time picking a dad for every day because I have so many. And after that, I was like, man, you know what? I need to start a podcast where I can bring these dads on and let them tell their own stories. I shouldn't have to tell their stories for them. I want them to tell their own stories. And it just kind of went from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad you brought that up because there's definitely a generalization on that. And I worked in daycares, I worked in schools for 19 years. So I see the great dads that are out there. And there were some that backhanded compliment. I'm going to use that. I like how you said that, because you used to sit there going, am I supposed to say thank you, or am I supposed to want to punch you in the mouth right now? but especially since you're the only one they're complimenting. But yeah, there was one where there was no mom. The mom was absent, and this dad was fighting every day to prove himself that he was a great dad, and he was an amazing dad. And I was just like, that shouldn't happen. So it's great, and that's what I like about your show, is you're bringing all these great men that can actually become a new positive or mentor, something that's a positive image for other men, to say, hey, no, we are doing this. We should pat ourselves on the back and change the narrative. Yeah. How would you say that fatherhood changed you the most? When
Fatherhood has challenged me in so many ways, man. It's made me see so many things about myself that I didn't know how impatient I was. That's like the biggest thing for me, just working on being patient, as much as I want my kids to do, especially now at the ages that they are now, as much as I want them to, do exactly what I say when I say it. And at times they just don't do it, even today, just now, before we came on here, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'm done talking. I got to go do this podcast. And I've been telling them to do the same thing since about 3:30 today. And it's 6 o'clock now, and I'm like, how is it not done, man? How?
Yeah.
But every time I start thinking like that, I feel like God just begins to show me ways in my life that I'm just the same, where there's certain things that I shouldn't be doing still to this day. And I've been doing it for years, things that I need to work on within myself. And so it kind of helps me to see that, I just got to be patient with them and, continue to just love on them, continue to give them the discipline that I give them, and, just be patient, and at some point they'll begin to change. So, patience has been like the biggest thing that fatherhood has taught me thus far.
Yeah. And that's a big one, because you're being tested every day. Every day. Here you think you got in the days that you're like, I got this, I did this, and then they just throw something else at you.
And it's funny you say that, because I do that at work all the time. At times I'm at work and I'm like, man, today I'm not gonna fuss, I'm not gonna yell, I'm gonna do all these great things. And on my way home, I'm just pumping myself up. Man, I can't wait to see my babies and all of this stuff. And then once I get them about an hour in, they'll test me. And then I'm just like, oh, here it comes. Oh no, I'm gonna fail again. And I'm like, well, I guess I gotta try tomorrow. And I tell myself that I'm not gonna be bothered by anything today. I'm gonna be good. And then it all goes up in my face within 10 minutes.
And that's just normal. So for anybody who's listening in, just know that it's not just you. Everybody's going through this. What would you say, or did you have anyone, or was there anything that was kind of served as a role model for you to show up for your kids the way that you do?
Ooh, not necessarily, not really growing up. Once I did have my kids, though, at that time in my life, I was in a good place. So I had my pastor on my side, and he taught me a lot, and he helped me a lot with just dealing with the whole fatherhood and just this whole new life that I was in. And a couple of other guys at my church, my friend Jason King, my man Ralph Robinson, my man Sean Nico, just these guys that were around me at that time, and they were all dads. So when I met all of them, they were all married with kids, and I was just this young kid that came into the church, and I'm like, wow, these are some different guys. I'm not used to hanging around guys like this, but it was good to see them. And then also my oldest brother, he was a single dad at the time. And so just watching my brother take custody of his son and seeing everything that he did, knowing, he was just like me without our dad. And just to see him, he was like a great inspiration for me to see how he handled everything and the pressures of life that came at him. So I had a few guys in my corner as I got older, but growing up, I really didn't see it. I really didn't have anyone there. But, I'm thankful for the guys that I did have once I did have kids. I'm thankful that I had a support group.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did mention that sometimes you just see it in a way where you see things growing up that you're thinking, that's not how I'm going to show up as a dad. So indirectly, it kind of influences you at the same time. But I wanted to know, actually, that I like to make the fun stuff and say, what do you like to do with your kids? I know the kids are different, they have different personalities, but what would you say is your favorite thing to do with your kids?
It's a lot of things we do. What I found lately, I really like watching them read. My son, he's just now reading, and I was watching him last night. I was helping him with some of his homework. He's in first grade. And just watching him read, I don't know, it just does something to me. I'm like, wow, this is really he was just a little baby just some years ago. And now to see him working out problems and, seeing him happy, I just like to see them happy, honestly. See them excited about doing good in something. So helping them with math, it does something for me to see them solve a problem. And I'm just like, what? Man, yes, give me a high five on that one, man. And then during the week, we go to the gym a lot. I take them out to the playground and let them play. I play some basketball and just let them run around the gym. So that's one of their things that they look forward to every week. And just keeping them busy. And just giving them things to do other than being in the house on having screen time. So just trying to always keep them busy at all times.
Keep them busy and keep them moving. So then that way you get a break later on. Yeah, exactly. Can you tell us a little bit about Dad Can We Talk? Can you talk about your podcast?
Well, yeah, just continuing on what I talked about earlier, once I decided that I was going to do a podcast, it was funny because I was in the library one day with the kids, just took them to the library, let them read and stuff. And I got on the computer and I was like, I just went on Google and put how to start a podcast. I got my phone notes out and I just wrote all these things. It was just first, I think it was like pick a topic that you're passionate about. And I'm like, and it said you're passionate about it and you have a lot of knowledge about it. And I'm like, well, fatherhood is something that I do every day. And I live this every day. So easy, fatherhood. And then it says something about come up with a name. And when I thought of the name, I went to thinking dad talk. I'm like, too generic.
Yeah.
I came through some other names. I'm like, that doesn't work. And then something just popped in my head. Dad, can we talk? And I just said it a few times. Dad, can we talk? Man, that sounds kind of good. I'm like, Dad, can we talk? I'm like, yeah, I like that one. And from there, I wrote that down. And I knew I wanted to, like I said, highlight Black dads and, have a podcast where I interview dads about, just getting the stories of dads so that people can hear it from the mouths of these men. And from there, that's what I did. And I started at a radio station. I ran the idea by my friend who was working at a radio station. Shout out to my man, Kirk Jerkins. And he just gave me, he sat down and listened to me for 5 minutes, talk about it. And he was like, man, listen, you already have the idea. You don't even need me. Mm-hmm. And he offered me a free hour of airtime every week.
Oh, wow.
Come on, man. Seriously? He was like, yeah, man, just tell me when you want to start. I was like, we can start next week if you want. And so it kind of started with that format where I wasn't necessarily interviewing people. I was coming up with different topics and we had segments throughout the hour. And I like that, but it wasn't really what I was aiming for. I did bring a few guys to the radio station to interview them, but there was a lot of politics around radio, certain things you can't do, can't say. It was just too much. And I felt like I couldn't allow my guests to have the freedom that I wanted them to have. And so after about a year, I just told my friend that I didn't want to do it anymore. And honestly, at that time, I kind of got discouraged about it. And I was like, maybe God didn't tell me to do that. So I just let it go. And I totally stopped. I wasn't even thinking about it anymore. And I ended up getting back in school to get my degree. I got into a media communications program at Full Sail University. And when I went there, maybe about 4 or 5 months in, I took a class that taught me how to make a logo. And it was pretty easy. I was like, man, this isn't that hard, man. I'm like, I do have this one podcast that I've been thinking about starting for the longest. And I started playing around with the logo and the current iteration of it. For anyone that might watch the video, it's on my shirt here. And I just started, I came up with this concept right here. Well, the original concept, it didn't match. At first, it was like a silhouette of, you could tell it was like a silhouette of these two businessmen with the suits on. You could tell they were white men. And I was like, it doesn't really match what I'm going for. It doesn't. I want it to look more like the people that I'm targeting. And so I was like, scratch that. And I found the two guys on the shirt. And they just, I don't know, they just kind of my niece always tells me one of the guys looks like me. And so I was like, man, that looks perfect for what I'm aiming for. And once I saw that and I showed it to my wife and I ran it by a few of my friends, and they were like, man, I love that. I love the concept. I love everything about it. And I was talking with one of my mentors, and he was like, man, you tell me about this podcast every time you come to my house. Why haven't you started it yet? I was like, I don't know, man. And I was like, you know what? Give me a date and a time. You're going to be my first guest. Like, cool. And if you go to my episode 1, that was my mentor. And that's how I got it started, February 2020. And from there, I just started reaching out to all the guys that I know. And now it's to the point to where now people reach out to me on Instagram and email. A guy from England reached out to me a few months back. I interviewed him on Zoom. I've interviewed 2 guys in Seattle that reached out to me. I interviewed a guy in Oklahoma, one guy in North Carolina, one guy in Virginia. So it's just started reaching out with people who were recognizing it. And, it just went from all the local dads that I know. And, so it's growing. Not as much as I know it could. I haven't even put any type of marketing into it or behind it. So, but it's growing. It's been really good. It's been a blessing to me to hear guys call me, or when they see me in the neighborhood or something, they just come up to me and express how much they are appreciative of what I'm doing and for giving dads a voice. So if anything, if I don't do anything else with the podcast, it's successful to me and it's reached a lot of people. And I feel like I've given a lot of guys a voice that no one else would give a voice to. So it's been a blessing.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you were the one that created that logo, because it is a really good logo for what you're doing. And the title, that's the first thing that caught my eye was when I saw, I was like, oh yeah, that one's a good one too. That's amazing. And like you said, is the fact that it has an impact on people that don't have that voice. It's really that's all about. So it's awesome. But that brings me actually to my next question is, can you tell us what you see in the transformation when you put a positive spin in for Black dads, especially because that's really what you're just trying to send that message out there. Do you see in those people that come up to you and talk about your show, do you see that transformation that can kind of help the people switch that, to change that stereotype.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to see it more and more now. It's funny because now people are starting to recognize me. I was doing DoorDash the other night, and I was just sitting inside of a Wingstop waiting for this order, and there were two guys over on the corner talking. I knew one of the guys, I didn't know him, but I just know of him. And they were just sitting talking, but the other guy, he just kept looking at me. I'm like, okay, cool, maybe he knows me. And he stopped talking. He was like, hey, are you the guy that does the one thing, for the men, or something positive for men or dads or something? I think it's like a dad talk show or something. I'm like, yeah, it's Dad, Can We Talk? And he was like, man, hey, listen, I like what you're doing. And it just, I'm like, this random guy that I've never met, there's people that recognize me just here in my city. And, just from a dad standpoint, dads are just so appreciative because, sometimes I interview dads that, like I say, some people would never even give these people the time of day. If I'm being honest, they don't have anything going on with themselves or anything, from what society would say. But when I see these guys and I know their stories, and I'm like, man, you have so much to say, you have so much to offer, and I know no one else would look at you like you're special and you have anything to say, but I feel like you have something to say.
Mm-hmm.
You have, guys that I know that are dealing with child support, something that I'm grateful that I don't have to deal with. Guys that I know that are going through custody battles right now, fighting for their children, fighting to even just be able to see their children, things that I don't have any experience with because I don't have that story. So giving them the opportunity to speak, and, after they're done, they tell me that there's a lot of people, like family members of theirs and friends of theirs, that come up to them and say, man, I didn't even know you had all that stuff going on. I wouldn't even knew that you had, that you were fighting for this or fighting for that. And because of that one interview and me asking them questions and allowing them to speak for themselves, it gives people clarity. Like, man, sometimes you can think you know what someone is going through until you sit down and actually talk with them and hear from them, because we hear certain things about people and we might assume, oh, okay, they're going through this, or, oh, I know what they're going through. But you don't know unless you sit down and talk with them. You can't say you know what that person is going through. And so I'm very big on that. So I'm big on sitting down and getting understanding, even if I don't agree with people. There's people that's come on the podcast that say things that I don't agree with, but I understand it once they tell me. I'm like, I understand why you might feel that way, and I understand why you think that way. I don't agree with it, but hey, that's not my issue. I want you to get your story out there. So to be able to give dads that, and women, so many women have come to me since I started this podcast and just told me how much they appreciate the podcast, because they're like, you actually get men to talk. I wish I could have got my cousin to talk, or I wish I could get my brother to talk, or even their dads sometimes, to be able to hear their dads verbalize certain things. One of my friends came on, and his daughter, I remember talking with his wife and his daughter, and they was like, we had no idea you even felt certain ways, things that you said, because a lot of times men, we don't verbalize these things, so
Exactly.
the big thing too with the podcast, I really wanted to help men feel safe to talk.
And that's what's beautiful about the show, because you really said something pivotal here. Is men are not supposed to express their frustrations. They're not supposed to show that they're struggling. They're supposed to just bury it all down and just hope that they don't blow up like a pressure cooker. And they have no outlet, and nobody can really understand. So I've noticed that even 5 years ago, there weren't that many, dads for dads group.
Yeah.
And there's more and more of these. And it's so important to have that, the support for men, because otherwise, the stats are there. Men have health issues later on, anger issues, heart problems, everything, all of that.
I
stems
love
to the
that.
fact that
I love
go
that you
ahead.
said that, because when I first got the idea for Dad Can We Talk back in 2017. In 2017, another reason why I wanted to start a podcast myself, because I'm an avid podcast listener. So when I went to search for podcasts, there was just a few dad podcasts out there. If you go and search today, you can find a plethora of them. They're everywhere. But back in 2017, there weren't podcasts out, especially on fatherhood and especially Black dads, because I did find a few guys. There was there was this one white dad that I would listen to, and then there was this one podcast with the two dads on it, and it was a good podcast, but I was like, it's not really, something that I can necessarily relate to. I think if I'm thinking about guys that I know right now, would they listen to this and be able to relate? They probably wouldn't. And so I'm like, man, let me start one that speaks of fatherhood from a Black man, from a Black dad's perspective, where we talk our own language, where we can understand one another and be able to relate. And there was none. I mean, I searched YouTube, I searched Apple Podcasts, I went on Google, and I just couldn't find it at that time. And so when I started it I actually got it into what it is now in 2020, but back when I was at the radio station in 2018, there was nothing.
There was nothing. And you're right, you need to find an out where people will understand your reality. And sometimes you don't get that out there. So that's your show is helping a lot of people. I'm going to change it up a little bit, and I'm curious to know, with your life experience, what kind of wisdom have you picked up along the way that you said, I definitely want my kids to know this so it can make their life a little easier?
Ooh, for one, it's something that I tell my kids even today. Don't be like Dad and wait until you're in your 30s to get your degree when you have a wife and kids. Don't do that. Don't wait that long. It's possible. I did it, and I passed with I think 3.6, 3.7 GPA. So I did it, but there were so many hurdles that I had to jump. And even still today, I got my bachelor's degree back in December. And it's so difficult for me to change my career now, because I work in a warehouse right now, and warehouse pays. And so with me having 3 kids and a wife and a house that we just bought 2 years ago, I can't just up and jump and switch careers. And this is an entirely different career. I've been in warehousing for the last 10 years. And it's been very difficult, because I know that most likely if I'm going to find work, the work that I want in my career, I'm going to have to, for one, relocate probably to a bigger city. And it's just not easy. It's just not an easy thing to just pack your family up and leave and go, and, I did get a job interview, and they were saying it's maybe about 2 hours away from me. And they were saying that I could work remote 3 days, but I would have to come to the office 2 days. And so they were worried about the commute, if I would be able to commute. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of hard. I'm like, man, if I just would have did this stuff earlier in my life before I got this deep into, my family and all of these things, that's something that I tell my kids right now. Know what you're gonna do. At least have some type of idea and focus in school. It's not difficult. For some reason, I just didn't, I went to college right after high school in 2007 when I graduated, and I spent the next 4 years horse playing, thinking that life was a joke and I got time and I'm still young and all of that. Man, I'm paying for all of those decisions, 15 years later, because I thought, I couldn't see to today. I didn't know that, at one point I would want to be serious about life and I would have kids that are looking up to me and a wife looking to me. I didn't see that at that time. So that's something that I tell my kid. I was just telling a young man yesterday that I was talking to, talking to him about graphic design, telling him, look into it, man, look into graphic design, web design, just start looking, because he was telling me he wanted to play basketball. I'm like, yeah, that's good. But even NBA players, they retired 35, 32, 30 years old, and they have to have a career after that. So don't bank on that. Have something that you can do just in case basketball doesn't work. Know what you want to do, man, and have some type of career path in mind, so that you don't be like me, 32 years old, trying to take classes, doing online classes full time, trying to juggle kids. It's too much.
Right.
Headache.
Yeah. I mean, you get it done, but if you can make it easier on your kids, right? You just, that's something. And again, you made a really good point there, because a lot of people don't understand that reality, but because I did also go back to school later on. And it's that reality of, I want to change my career. I want to change my life, because I went through all this for that. But the reality of the life is, you can't just up and leave and up and change career, or take a pay cut right away, or lose benefits. So a lot of people that don't see that will say, well, why aren't they're just sitting on the degree? But the reality is, it's not necessarily possible right away. So it's good advice to give younger kids, and they might not get it, because I know we were told this when we were younger. We're just like, you don't know what you're talking about, but something will stick, and they will appreciate that. I just, go ahead.
Oh, no, I said, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, I'm just curious to know, can you tell us if, how many times have you been told that you do a great job as a dad, and not just a weekend dad, but as a dad? How many times are you told?
I get told I'm a good weekend dad a lot.
I can't believe it. I just had to say it, because that just floored me when you said it. I'm like, I can't believe it.
But I do get a lot of compliments, and I'm learning to really take the compliments in stride, because everyone doesn't have bad intentions. Some people really do look at it and say, wow, I really like what you're doing. And like I said, I do understand it, because there are a lot of kids that don't have dads, and me being one of them. And I'll even say that about my dad. My dad has made an effort, and I love my dad right now. We talk every week now, and as I've gotten older, we have built a great relationship. So shout out to my dad. But growing up, that wasn't something that I saw. But I just do think it's really important right now, for me to learn to accept those compliments, because there are a lot of people that do that. They do. Hello, there's a kid walking by my house. But
I love that.
But I do get the compliments, and like I say, so I've learned to just take them, and just sometimes just random people. One day I was walking down the street with my kids. We just went on a walk, and this woman drove past us, and she turned her car around, and she came back, and she was like, young man, I really, really, really appreciate what you're doing. And I just want to turn around and tell you that I just love to see you spending time with your children, putting in the quality time. And I was like, wow, thanks. And it's, it's just something that people do a lot, like I say, in the grocery store, or I was in the library again with my kids earlier this week, and the librarian told me that she was like, I just really like to see dads coming in with their kids, and you're making sure that reading is something that they do, and that's very important. And I just really appreciate you. So I hear it a lot, from multiple people, guys at my job. It happens a lot. So, at times sometimes I'm like, are you just saying that because I'm Black? but and I'm learning to just really be able to accept that, because everyone doesn't have bad intentions, so I'm really learning to just accept it.
That's good. Take the compliment, even if you think it's a little shady. You just gotta take it because dads don't get compliments that often. I find, and it's important to take them. What would you say? What kind of advice or support you think that men would need when they're about to become fathers? You know, when this is the first one. It's terrifying, it's exciting, it's all sorts of stuff. What kind of advice or support do you think that men need when they're about to become dads?
I would say, so much. I think for me, the biggest thing was learning your child's cry, learning that children have different cries. I used to panic every time my baby would cry. Oh my God, I would panic. And so my wife and I, we would alternate, one night she stays up with the child, the next night I stay up with the child. So I remember one night, it was my night, and I'm up 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, she was little, she was still eating 3 times a night, every 3 hours. And I woke her up, I fed her, and she was just crying. I'm like, oh my God, is she about to die? I'm like, maybe there's something wrong with her. Maybe she's about to die. And she was maybe a week old, maybe a little over a week. And so I called my mom, and I was like, Ma, I think I can't get the baby to stop crying. I think I'm about to take her back to the hospital. And my mom was like, to the hospital? She was like, I was like, I know, I fed her, I birthed her, I'm walking around carrying her, and I'm doing everything, and she just won't stop crying. I think it's something wrong. And she was like, boy, she might have gas. And she was like, you should go to Walgreens and go and buy her some Gas X. And I was like, okay, cool. So, I packed her, got her, put her in the car seat, drove down the street, because Walgreens is right down the street from my house. And what I found out 2 things that night. I found out that if you get in the car with the kids and you drive, they will go to sleep.
Yes.
She was crying all that time. And once I got her in the car, 1 minute down the street, she was asleep. And I was like, huh? It's been like 30 minutes. So I went in the store, I got the Gas X, we got back home, I gave her a little bit of that, and she let out her poop and she went to sleep. I was like, wow, that's so simple, man. But thankfully my mom told me what she told me, because I was really considering taking her to the hospital. Because I'm like, there has to be something wrong with her.
That's awesome. Because you can laugh about it now, but it was real when it was happening.
It was real. It was real. So, just knowing that type of stuff. And once I got to my second child with my son, I knew, like, when he cries, I'm just like, he's just crying because he wants someone to hold him, or he's crying because he's hungry, or he's crying because he needs to be changed. I found out the different cries of his, and I just knew, people would hear the baby crying. I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong with him. He's all right. He's cool. He wants me to hold him. He's trying to get my attention. But there's other times when there's really something wrong with him, and I just knew the cry. I'm like, wait, there's something wrong this time. So I would say that, because that's a real panic button that you can hit, when you can't get the baby to stop crying, and it messes with your psyche, just psychologically, it can really bother you.
Oh yeah, you feel so powerless and helpless, and as a dad especially, because you feel like that as a mother too, but as a dad I can only imagine you're supposed to be the protector, and this child has got you like, you just have no idea. Thinking, what kind of dad am I going to be if I can't even make it stop crying? So yeah, that's a good advice. Know the cries and call your mom. Or your dad, but they will know, and listen to them because they know. I asked this question at every interview because I made a promise to a little girl that kids are asked this question all the time. And she was interviewing adults for a school project about 3-4 years ago, and the adults wouldn't answer, and she would get frustrated.
Yeah.
And her mom was just like, maybe you should stop asking, because it's obviously not a quiz. And she's like, no, somebody's going to get it. And when she asked me, I answered, and she got all excited. And so I told her that for every interview, I would ask the same thing. And that question is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Ooh, what do I'm still
Not
trying
an
to
easy
figure
one.
out. I am trying to figure it out, man. I'm 33 and still trying to figure it out. I will say this, and my wife agrees, she would agree. I would love to just talk for my life when I grow up. Just talk for a living. I would do that every day, all day, just talk and meet people. And I could do that for the rest of my life if I could and get paid for it. Oh my God, I would do that all day. Sign me up.
That's a dream, and you're doing it. You're somehow doing it now, but yeah, that's a good thing to do. Yeah. That's what I like about asking this question, is because when you're not a child, I understand now how hard it is for a child to answer to, because we can't even answer it.
Exactly.
But that we're actually picking stuff that we want to do, as opposed to, oh, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to, the typical stuff. But we're actually thinking about stuff we actually want to do. So it's a fun question to ask. I really appreciate everything that you shared tonight. It's going to help a lot of people. And I just wanted to know, for anybody who wants to listen in on your show, to reach out or to follow you, where can they reach you?
You can find me on Facebook at Dad Can We Talk. You can also find me on Facebook by my name, by Anthony Reshad Ray. You can find me on Instagram at Dad Can We Talk. You can find me on TikTok at Dad Can We Talk. I don't use that as much. You can find me on Twitter at Dad Can We Talk. I don't use that one as much. And if you want to find the podcast, you could find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You can find me on my website at www.dadcanwetalk.com. All my episodes are streaming there. My YouTube page is also on there, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Dad Can We Talk. I'm just everywhere. If you go on Google and just type in Dad Can We Talk, I usually come up within the first 3 entries. And yeah, that's how you can find me. Or you can email me at dadcanwetalk@gmail.com.
Nice. Well, thank you. And I'll add those in the description of this episode and then in the comments as well. And I invite anybody who's listening as well to chime in and to talk with us and put in your comments. Don't be afraid to tell us what you think about all this. And if you have any wisdom you'd like to pass on, we'd always appreciate it. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I could talk to you all day about this stuff, and I love the work that you do. So thank you again for joining in, and for everybody listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.